Today we're taking a look at an extra sharp katana. romanceofmen.com.
Pause.
Whoa, wait a minute. Don't go anywhere, don't go anywhere. What may sound like a 2008 Fujoshi hangout is actually a manufacturer of quality steel katanas. And they did send me this katana, the Fukyo Katana, for review. Now, what drew me to Romance of Men's website was their custom katana builder. If you go to the website, you can check out their a la carte builder for a custom katana, which I'm always a huge fan of, and it does seem like this trend is catching on with other katana manufacturers as well. The Fukyo Katana is a sword that has been reviewed by a lot of other YouTubers, and Romance of Men was kind enough to send us a sample for review, and I opted in for their extra sharpening service. And right out of the box, this thing is razor sharp. It just slices right through. Let's try that again. Yeah, it's carving that paper really nice. This sword is one of their production swords, so I haven't been able to try out their custom katana builder yet, but the Fukyo Katana can be found on their website for about $200. It's made out of a spring steel. They didn't list that spring steel type on there, but I'm guessing if this is a Chinese-made sword that it is probably 65 manganese steel, which is becoming a common steel with even katanas. Right out of the box, it's like surprisingly light in the hand. There is, I would say the grip is a little thin for my personal taste, but I have larger hands. But if you have smaller hands, I would say that this is going to feel pretty comfortable. The bohi, the fullers right here, they usually make a sword whistle sound when you cut with them. This one, it's a little quieter. So far, I like the way that this sword feels. It's nice and nimble in the hands. It doesn't feel like a heavy chopper, meaning it may not do as well against heavier targets, but it would be very good to zip through the soft targets like tatami and bottles. But everything about it so far just feels good, including doing EI or any Bato Jutsu type draws. You're going to have an easy time drawing it out, and it's not going to tire your hands out too much. And that's most likely due to its lighter weight. We'll get to the specs in just a bit to see how heavy this is. But the balance point is, I would say, pretty on par with most katanas we've dealt with. Probably the 5 to 6 inches above the guard POB, which, again, very common. If we take a look at other katanas, such as, once again, the Cult of Athena sword, let's see where the balance point on this sword is. It's a little bit closer to the Tsuba. The LK Chen Shinto Oni Katana is a really good benchmark for entry-level, decent quality swords, so it's a great comparison. The grip, also known as the tsuka, is of adequate length. It's not too short and not too long. It's not like a nagimaki that's going to come out to here, but it also isn't short enough that two hands feels uncomfortable. This is a very standard length that most katanas on the market, especially standard ones, are going to have. Feels good. The grip cordage, the tsuka ito, is very comfortable, but I would say that it is a cheaper material. It isn't going to be silk. It may not even be cotton. It may be some form of synthetic. I'm not sure, but it feels like a lower end but adequate and nicely put together grip. And it does have some stingray skin that we'll get more into later on once we get some close-ups. But feeling wise, I think that a lot of people are going to like this sword because it doesn't feel too dainty and it doesn't feel too forward heavy. I am cautioned to see how this is going to perform against harder targets, but we are going to cut through some harder targets with this sword. As I said before, I opted in for an extra sharpening service that they do offer. I think it's called their Super Sharp option. And as promised, this sword did come with a very keen edge, and it is sharp to the touch. I would even say that this is probably shaving sharp. The Fukyo Katana comes with a really cool looking saya, the scabbard. It has this speckled pattern on it that is a mixture of gold and green, and it matches the fittings and the cordage really, really nicely. It also has a very cool mosaic style tsuba that I do find to be very, very unique. It doesn't look like a standard, just run-of-the-mill katana. I like all the fittings. One thing that I'm not really a fan of is this cheap sageo, and sageo is the cordage that is typically found on your scabbard, and it's used for just connecting it to your body, tying it as a lanyard. But this seems so much cheaper than the other katanas that we've reviewed. It's so thin. Another part that I'm not really fond of is the fitment of this part called the habaki and the koiguchi, which is the opening of the saya. It's very, very, very loose, and that makes the sword free fall out of the scabbard. It's something on higher quality katanas you're not really going to have that problem, and that's why you see in samurai movies where they have to pop that sword out. They're using their thumb to pop it out because there's typically a very tight seal between the habaki and the koiguchi, and this one doesn't have that. We take a look at a higher end katana from RVA Katana, and we notice right off the bat, this thing's not coming out because there is a tight seal between the habaki and the koiguchi. And put it in, it's not coming out. Not only is that important for keeping moisture out of your saya and away from your steel, it is also important so things like this don't happen. I would love to see Romance of Men tighten this up just a little bit to make sure that this is safe when people are practicing with it, because you don't want the sword to free fall out. Right away, the katana has some very unique aesthetic features, such as this engraving on the habaki. Very cool. And the extra sharpening service that we ordered seems to have left a different level of polish near the edge, also known as the ha. It's noticeable, but it doesn't form into an ugly secondary bevel, which I usually cannot stand. But you can see a micro bevel only in the light. When we go a little lower, you won't be able to see that micro bevel all that much at all, but you will still see the difference in polishing that that extra sharpening service left. And of course, we have the double fuller on each side that really makes this katana stand out. Moving down to the tsuba, or the guard, it is a very unique mosaic style tsuba that really makes this katana stand out. I don't own any other swords that have this style, and I thought it was a very cool addition. Tsuka has very standard fittings. These fittings I've seen in other katanas before, so I wouldn't say there's anything really unique about it. But the same, the stingray skin underneath, is real, and I believe it's panel wrapped, meaning it doesn't wrap all the way around the grip. It just is laid out in strips. This is pretty standard for entry-level, budget-friendly katanas. In terms of weight, this katana comes out to 2 pounds and 1.3 ounces. Crazy, and let's take a look. It is still very straight. Atlas, have you cut bamboo with a katana before?
I don't think so.
Let's take a look. And you've definitely never cut with that katana before, right?
Yeah, definitely not.
So the Romance of Men's edge is either not made out of a steel good for hard targets, or their super sharpening service that they provided made the edge a little too thin for something like the bamboo here, because we haven't hit anything else but bamboo with this sword, and I mean, as you can tell, it's bent, and it's bent pretty bad. And that, I mean, that could happen with a very thin edge no matter what steel you use, but because it's still sharp down here, and it's honestly still sharp right at the cutting edge, so I don't think it dulled. I honestly think that the steel is just a little too thin up top for something like this. We take a look at this test sample from RVA Katana, and it has been going through the same targets, and we don't have any of the same deformation. It is a thicker stock steel, I think, from what I can tell. Actually, they're about the same. That's just from eyeballing it, but the edge, I think, on this one is not as thin, and it is also made out of a specialized tool steel. All right, so cutting with this sword, it did pretty well up until the very end, but as you can see, there is damage to the edge, mainly done by bamboo. I don't think that this sword is not strong enough to handle bamboo, but I don't think it was geared towards that kind of cutting. And I think the culprit behind this is actually the extra sharpening service that I ordered, because that thins out the edge considerably. This is why a lot of battlefield swords were not razor sharp, but they were sharp enough to do a job, but they needed to be durable enough to withstand heavy combat. Bamboo typically doesn't do this to other katanas we've reviewed, and it's only at the edge that we see the damage. There isn't any damage or any bend or set to the katana itself. It's very straight, it's still true, and that's what leads me to believe that the edge was too thin to deal with hard targets. Were this tatami or just bottles, I don't think we'd have this problem. So overall, what do I think of the Romance of Men Fukyo Katana? I think for the price point of $200, there has to be some improvements for it to be worth that full potential. The very first one, the seal between the koiguchi of the scabbard and the habaki, the collar. I do think it needs to be a little tighter, but that is my opinion as a kenjutsu practitioner and somebody that handles katanas quite frequently. This may be okay for a collector who doesn't really need the use of the saya as much, but if you plan on using this sword for tameshigiri practice or any kind of cutting practice in a more formal training setting, I would say that having a tighter fit between these two is going to be very important. If I were to choose again, I would not opt in to get the extra sharpening service because it thinned out the edge a little too much for my liking. I didn't get much more out of the extra sharpness than I've gotten out of other katanas, even though this sword did come as sharp as promised. This katana cut so well though, because of how sharp it was and how well made it is, that even brand new cutters, people who have never even touched a katana before, were able to zip through water bottles as if they had cut with a katana before. And that's usually a good hallmark of how well a katana or any other sword handles. If a new person with very little training on edge alignment can get this sword through targets, it usually shows that there's a good level of sharpness that comes with it. And if it does not get damaged, even after an inexperienced cutter uses it, I can usually say that this katana is going to perform well when a more experienced person is going to cut with it. I think some further improvements that might help this katana sell even more is things like the sageo. The sageo cord here is just a little too cheap. It almost looks like a costume grade accessory for this sword, and I think that Romance of Men could really pump up the value of this sword with a thicker, more traditional looking sageo to come with this. That being said, this sword is considered a budget tier katana, so we have to temper our expectations. The only other complaint that I would say I have is the same complaint I have with other sword manufacturers as well, and it is the shitodome right here, these things. Have them glued in so they're not just free floating and waiting to come out once I pull the sageo out. They should be somehow attached with maybe some wood glue or some super glue to make sure that they don't fall out of this little piece right here. Other than that, Romance of Men has been a pleasure to speak with. They are very responsive, and any questions I had about the katana, they answer almost immediately. So I assume that their customer service is going to be great, and I am very excited to hopefully try out their new custom katana builder and maybe build a katana of my dreams. Either way, you should go check them out and maybe build a katana of your own. If you guys are interested in historical combat, especially Japanese martial arts such as kenjutsu, check out our website, www.historicalfightingarts.com. We study a very unique and modern kenjutsu system called Shinmoretsu Ryu, which is very sparring heavy and very combat heavy, and I'd love for you to go and check it out. If you're into other martial arts such as historical European martial arts, we also teach many of those disciplines as well. And if you are in the Norfolk, Virginia or Fredericksburg, Virginia locations, you need to come by and say hi. We'd love to offer you a free class to try us out. If you like coffee, we now offer our Duelist Elixir for sale online right now. This stuff tastes great. I love this. Most of our club drinks this. It's not just because there's swords on the front of it. It actually just tastes really good. That's all I got for you today. Bye.